Welcome to the NBA Slate Breakdown. It's Tuesday, December 12th. I'm Jason Gilba. With me is Brent Hyden. 7 games. We're hoping for a. You were kind of going on this past week. You had it way rougher than I did over the weekend, but I was back and got a taste of it full force last night.
I'm just not going to say anything. I don't know if our watchers can read my whiteboard and my terrible handwriting, but that's I'm just going to leave it at that. Just all we can do is move on and hope it doesn't happen again tonight.
I think we need to book some tickets to Boston and march in the streets because I think that's the only way at this point that it's going to change.
Yeah, I mean the only thing like send feedback to DraftKings and FanDuel and just let them know that you're frustrated and that you want to see their late swap contests improve. All we can do is hope that they listen. It doesn't seem like they really care that much, but the more people that send feedback and constructive feedback at that, hopefully things change.
What do you mean? I'm going to use your air quotes here, but I thought user feedback is what they like.
I don't know where they're getting their user feedback from because it doesn't seem to be any of the feedback that the thousands of people that I follow on Twitter and see on Twitter every day are talking about. But like I said, send constructive feedback. Don't sit there and send emails threatening family members and cussing and all this stuff. Just send constructive feedback. Explain why you want this to change, uh, and I mean, hopefully they listen. That's all I can really say.
I guess I'll go delete my drafts then. Oh man, let's dive into tonight's slate. A good 7 game slate here. Obviously, there are injury news. I thought we did a pretty good job yesterday of kind of covering what the potential injury stuff was going to happen. We do have guys like John Wall tonight, Kevin Love, who are questionable. Who we'll talk about here in this first game with Atlanta and Cleveland. And this is a game that we've seen twice already. We got a couple of guys that we do need to keep an eye on for injury news. We saw John Collins just get ruled out a few minutes ago, so that clears a little bit up.
Yeah, hopefully he stays ruled out. I'll try not to harp on it too much, but yeah, he is ruled out, and that kind of opens things up a little bit. You mentioned Kevin Love; he is questionable, but expected to play. Definitely want to keep an eye on that news. I wrote Kevin Love up today in my GPP article. I absolutely love him in the spot if he plays, and if he doesn't, like it's such a good LeBron James spot. It's a good LeBron James spot regardless. But if Kevin Love sits, like LeBron James is in just an amazing, amazing spot here.
Yeah, and I know what you mentioned before the show is basically, if Love sits, you're more than fine with paying for LeBron. If Love plays, you're kind of off him a little bit here, going with a more balanced approach.
Yeah, just based on how things have been recently and the success that I've had with balanced lineups, I feel like that's probably the way that I'm going to go tonight. Again, if Kevin Love sits out, like it's really tough to fade LeBron. I mean, we saw him last game just go off without Kevin Love, and that was against the Sixers. He put up 74 fantasy points, had 30, 13, and 13. He has like a 37% usage rate without Kevin Love on the floor and is averaging 1.79 fantasy points per minute.
Just outstanding numbers. And, outside of those two, I don't have a lot of interest really outside of the bigger guys tonight for Cleveland. Like J.R. Smith is still cheap. I mean, I guess if Love is ruled out, like you can take some darts on some guys like Jeff Green. I know Tristan Thompson's also a game time decision tonight, but probably not at full health yet.
Yeah, and he's expected to come off the bench, and I would expect that to happen even if Kevin Love sits out. You'll probably see Ante Zizic get the start again. I'm kind of interested in Wade here. It's definitely a good spot. Production has come down a little bit as of late, but because of that, his price is down. So I don't mind going there. Kyle Korver is always worth a shot in GPPs. And if Kevin Love sits, I don't mind Jay Crowder and Jeff Green in this spot.
Yep. No, I don't either. Really good matchup across the board. On the Atlanta side of things here, pretty much the usual suspects. I don't mind Dennis Schroeder tonight. Upside's been a little bit capped lately, but still a decent spot for him. Prices dropped just a little bit. He was up over 8K a few games ago. I think he's kind of more if you're looking to kind of stack this game, and obviously if Schroeder is going to be going off if this game does stay close. Schroeder has a bad game. I'm a little concerned.
Yeah, he's more of a cash game option for me just because even at his price, still he doesn't have a ton of upside. But we've seen him against the Cavaliers put average about 40 fantasy points, which is fine. I'll take that in cash games. Cleveland does defend the pick and roll fairly well as far as the ball handler goes, but their rim protection isn't great. So I don't hate him in GPPs. I just don't see a ton of upside. It's just more of a safe cash game play for me. I think the guy that I'm most interested in is Bazemore, and it probably means Prince is going to have a good night because I like Bazemore, but um, he's coming off a bad game against the Knicks, but before that against Orlando had an outstanding outing with 45 fantasy points, shot the ball really well in that game. 5,300 on DraftKings, still a little too cheap for a guy with a bunch of upside, but he's more of a GPP option there.
Yeah, I definitely don't mind him. With Collins out, Ilyasova back in play here and still fairly cheap.
Yeah, he is. I think he's a guy that you can realistically expect to get probably 30, 32 minutes here against the Cavaliers, and he's been outstanding against them. In their one matchup earlier this season, 30 minutes, 37 fantasy points. I mean, Love's defense not great. Like that's who you'd expect to be on him for the majority of the time he's on the floor. So I do like Ursa on here.
Yep. Anyone else from Atlanta?
Tyler Kavanaugh's cheap, coming off a game where he didn't play too terribly well, but the minutes have been decent for him. He had over 20 in 4 straight games prior to the Knicks game. He basically just gets points and rebounds, and that's it. So he's a guy that's going to spot up a lot from the perimeter, and we know the Cavaliers not great perimeter defense. So you could take a shot. He's 3,800 on DraftKings.
Lakers Knicks next one here, 213 total. This game obviously is probably going to feature a lot of the cover boys of articles around the industry with Porzingis, but we'll start with this Lakers side here. I have some interest a little bit here in the backcourt. Lonzo Ball is always a GPP play if you want to look at it, but I kind of like Clarkson and KCP a little bit more here.
Yeah, it's interesting to note that people are writing the Lonzo Ball in his first game at the Garden narrative. Like, I don't. Is that really a thing? Is it really a thing? Like a player's first game at the Garden, they're just gonna go bananas because it's their first game at Madison Square Garden. Like, is that really a thing?
I mean, I think people get up for it, but I'm not putting that in terms of like raising a projection for a guy because he's playing at Madison Square, unless it's LeBron. LeBron has a little bit of narrative. Obviously when Phil Jackson was there, but he's always done well at the Garden.
Like, I guess I need to put that in my projection model and just like have some sort of multiplier for Madison Square Garden games or something, because I guess that's what people are expecting Lonzo to have a good game because it's there. Like he's always going to be a GPP guy for me. I'm never going to recommend him in cash because he's just so extremely volatile. I don't necessarily like him here in this spot strictly because, as I've talked about plenty of times before, the Knicks are an excellent rim protection team, and that's kind of shocking even with Enes Kanter in the middle. But like Lonzo's either taking threes or he's attacking the rim, and he's terrible at all of those things. And combine that with the fact that the Knicks are a really good rim protection team, leads me to think that Lonzo's probably going to have a tough time scoring. And so if that's going to happen, you're relying on him strictly getting assists and rebounds. And guess what? The Knicks are an excellent rebounding team. Takes away the upside there. So now you're just hoping he gets like 18 assists and pulls a Rajon Rondo and gets, 18 and 10 double-double or something. So upside's always there, but I just don't see it tonight. Like you mentioned Clarkson, I think he's probably the better play because if Lonzo struggles, you're going to see Clarkson get the majority of the minutes.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm looking for. Like he's a little bit cheaper. Lonzo's kind of a guy who, if you're building multiple lineups, you can throw a share in or two. But like outside that, I think if you're building three, like I don't know if he even cracks my first three. I just think he's more of, if you're building a lot, you're kind of getting some exposure to more of the Lakers side. But Clarkson's the kind of the first guy that I'm looking at for this Lakers team. And then obviously KCP, just because the mints are going to be there. He's still fairly cheap. It's also a decent spot for him.
Yeah, those are it's Clarkson, it's KCP for the most part, just because they're guys that don't necessarily rely on a ton of shots at the rim. Like Clarkson, 36% of his field goals come at the rim. KCP 21, but these guys also attempt a lot of mid-range shots and some three-pointers. So those are the guys that I want because that's where the defense is a little less less solid for the Knicks.
Yep. Some of the front court guys, Brandon Ingram, like, I mean, we've talked about this before with the Knicks. I mean, they're a good rebounding team. I kind of do worry about the front court of the Lakers here just a little bit.
Yeah, I do as well. Like I don't mind. You could use Ingram and Randall and Kuzma, these guys in GPPs. Like could be like especially Ingram just because the minutes are going to be there. With Kuzma and Nance and Randall, like unfortunately you're just whoever is the hot hand is going to be the guy that's in there. So if you want to you get some exposure to the Lakers front court, go for it. But I wouldn't build around any of these guys in your lineups.
No, I think they're just GPP dart throws for me because, like you said, it's just kind of a revolving door of upside between the three of them. You kind of usually get two out of the three getting decent games a night. Um, for me, I'll probably side with the cheaper and probably go a little bit with Randall because he is a significant discount from some of these other guys here.
Yeah, he would be the guy that I have the most interest in GPPs would be Randall.
So, anyone else on the Lakers?
No.
Let's move to the Knicks here. Obviously, I think a lot of people are going to be looking to attack Porzingis in this spot. Coming off a strong game against Atlanta, good spot here against the Lakers. That 8,500 price tag just doesn't seem to be high enough on DraftKings there for him here.
Yeah, FanDuel, it's ridiculous. I don't have FanDuel pulled up right now, but I know this price tag is nearing almost 10,000 on FanDuel, which is just insane. But I actually wonder how popular he's going to be because he had been playing really bad, had a decent game against Atlanta, put up 52 fantasy points. Like, are people going to just take that one good game and move on and hope that he doesn't burn them tonight? Like, I don't know how popular he's actually going to be. I wrote him up in the GPP article. Like, it's such a good spot for him. Like I kind of hope people just overthink it and fade him. I'm absolutely not going to fade him tonight. Like the usage without Tim Hardaway Jr. is insane. 36.2 fantasy points or 36.2% usage rate. Production's not great. A little over 1 fantasy point per minute. Some of that's just because his efficiency had been down because he was battling that ankle injury, but like with Enes Kanter hobbled and like no one else really to score for this team, like I don't see how Kanter doesn't attempt like 25 shots in this game.
Yeah, 9,700 on FanDuel, like he's up there, $1,200 difference. And I mean, I think there's some viable pivots off Porzingis. I mean, you made a good point that people do overthink it. We really hasn't been in play much of late because he's been pretty average, but I don't know. People just kind of glare up every time the Lakers are on the screen, like their eyes pop in this matchup. And I don't know. I think he'll be a little bit more popular than what people think.
Yeah, we'll have to see. I mean, it is an excellent matchup for it. I got into some of the in-depth stuff in my article today, so y'all will have to check that out. But it is just a great spot. And I mentioned Enes Kanter being banged up. Dude has been a warrior. Like he came to the arena against Atlanta on crutches, played 16 minutes, and left on crutches, and then was at practice yesterday morning. Like the dude has been coming and going on crutches, yet he's still out there playing and practicing. He's out of play until he's healthy. And I mentioned like with him being hobbled, like that's a lot of extra rebound chances that are going to fall towards Porzingis tonight.
Yeah. Courtney Lee, guy I don't mind here, small forward. Prices come up a little bit, but in this spot, fairly consistent. Also should be able to rack up some peripheral stats here. So he's another guy that I'm looking at for the Knicks.
Yeah, it's kind of tough to pay that price, but you expect him to get a solid amount of minutes. Like the game against Atlanta seems to be an outlier. I would expect him to play probably 32, 34 minutes, and it's a decent spot for him. I have a little bit of interest in Doug McDermott here, who shoots the ball really, really well at home this season. Minutes have started to climb for him just because they're shorthanded. So I think McDermott is a very, very interesting, cheap, like cash / GPP option here.
Yeah. You have an interest in point guards here. Jared Jack, we see Noah Kina pick up a little bit more minutes of late too.
Yeah. I mean, Jack does actually see a decent boost in usage whenever with Tim Hardaway Jr. off the floor. He has about almost a 19% usage, 0.84 fantasy points per minute. I don't really necessarily like the price in this matchup. Like I loved him against Atlanta and he only put up 27 fantasy points. Like I think he's cash viable. I just don't see like 30 fantasy point upside here.
I kind of, yeah, because JJ Barea is a little bit higher, like with Dennis Smith out, I kind of prefer him, even though he's against the Spurs.
Yeah, there's better GPP options for sure, and we'll get to a few of them later on. But again, cash games, he's probably one of the safer point guard options in that like low 4K range.
Denver, Detroit next here, 210 total. Start with this Denver side. Jokic still ruled out. We've kind of seen a little bit of a crowded front court. I We've seen Detroit kind of slip off and play like their defense has been lacking of late. But still the backcourt, like I don't have a lot of interest in the backcourt guys like Denver that I usually do.
I don't necessarily have a bunch of interest in the backcourt. Like Murray came back last game and played a decent amount of minutes. He just didn't play very well. Moutier played some minutes, didn't play very well. Like they ran for a while in that last game. They ran Will Barton and Gary Harris alongside each other in the backcourt. With the way Mike Malone is, like he's just gonna ride the hot hand, or he's gonna ride whoever's playing really good defense. And like Murray and Moutier, not great guys, like as far as defense, and like they're just so volatile. So if you want to take a shot in GPPs, go for it. I don't think you can look at either one of those two guys in cash games. I think the best option of the night is going to be continue to be Will Barton. We know Detroit's defense has slipped over the last 10 games against small forwards. They rank last in the NBA in defensive efficiency. Like if people are going to be off of Will Barton because they think Stanley Johnson is a good defender, like I'm going to be all over that, because if Malone does decide to roll out Murray and Harris in the backcourt for extended minutes, then you're going to get a lot of Will Barton at the three, and that's a matchup that he can really exploit.
Yeah, and he's played 40 plus minutes in 3 of the last 4 games, and in those games he's put up over 40 fantasy points. Like you said, I mean, if people are going to be off him, there's huge upside, and especially at a position where I think for me, I'm going to be looking to pay down a little bit, but Barton's a guy that I really don't mind. Gary Harris is a little bit expensive for me here, but I mean, he's another one I really don't hate it either.
Yeah, it kind of concerns me. He'll probably be matched up with Avery Bradley for the majority of the game. And it should be noted that Bradley missed shoot around with an illness, but he is expected to play. So that is an early game. We should get news before lock, but who knows? It is Stan Van Gundy. So I don't know what's going to happen there. But if Bradley does sit, like I do have more interest in Gary Harris, but as it sits right now, I think Barton's the only guy that I really have interest in. Maybe a flyer on Moutier and GPPs, just because like if he gets hot, like he could put up a solid outing.
Yeah. And in the front court, I mean, Detroit has really struggled. Once again, I don't mind for Reed. The minutes have seemed to be consistent. I mean, he's averaging 28 over the last 5. Been a little bit of a foul machine over the last few games, but I mean, I don't mind him at his price. Like 5,200 on DK is still fairly reasonable.
I just don't want to mess with. I don't want to mess with any of these guys in cash. Like they're all fine GPP options, but like I just don't want to mess with the Malone like rotations here. Like, I mean, the minutes have been fine for Fareed, 32, 30, 24, 28, but like Malone could get a wild hair up his ass and just decide to play like Trey Lyles at the 5 or something. Like, and if Drummond is out there destroying Plumlee and Fareed, like he's going to try something crazy and try to find a way to counter Drummond. So if you want to go in GPPs, go for it. Like, there's just so many better options in cash games.
Do you mean when Drummond destroys Plumlee?
Yeah. I mean, I should say when, because it's going to happen. Like I'm joking about Trey Lyles at the 5. Like they're not going to play him at the 5, but like I don't know what they would do, but like it's just so tough with the way Malone is running his front court rotation. Like the only guy I have interest in is Trey Lyles, and like he's been outstanding recently. I know he had the one game against Orlando where he shot 0 of 8 from the floor. But he still played 22 minutes in that. He played 26 minutes last game, 27 against the Pelicans. Like Malone has been praising this guy. 3 of the top 5 defensive lineups for the Nuggets in the month of December have Trey Lyles in it. Like he's a guy that's just going to continue to get minutes. So he's the guy that I have the most interest in from this front court.
Yeah, I'm with you. And, I think Trey Lyles is an interesting play. And I think a lot of people are going to look at Wilson Chandler and the fact that he played 37 minutes last game. He's fairly cheap, but I don't have a ton of interest in Chandler here.
With the way things have been going recently, I refuse to play anybody that has any kind of recent injury history, and that's Wilson Chandler. So just not going to happen for me.
On the Detroit side of things here, we'll start off with Drummond, expensive, but in a really good spot here. Obviously, we've seen the fantasy points allowed over the last few games with Jokic out, really dive up. Drummond's in a really strong spot.
I don't care about the price on Drummond. He's in my lineups. Like I don't care. Like if people are going to fade him because his price is too high, like I will take that all day long. I mean, Denver 25th in defensive efficiency against centers over on the entire season, but over the last 10 games, that's like they are 29th. They're giving up 27.8 points, 14.2 rebounds, 5.3 assists, and a combined 3.5 blocks and steals. Drummond is going to feast, absolutely just destroy Denver tonight. There's no way I'm fading him in any format.
I'm looking his way as well. As far as other options from Detroit, Tobias a little expensive for my taste. He's kind of crept up into a range where he's not quite that bargain anymore. So I don't know how much I really like him tonight.
I love Tobias. I wrote him up in my GPP article. Go figure. It's like I know he's been quiet recently. It's still crazy. The dude's over the last 6 games, he shot 41% from 3-point range. That is insanely effective. Like he's still touching the ball a lot. He leads the team in touches at 77 per game. Like, he's still shooting a lot. Like the rebounds and the assist numbers have come down a little bit, but this is an excellent bounce back spot. You expect Detroit to be playing a little bit faster because the pace of Denver. Like he's great in isolation. Denver struggles in isolation. He's great in transition. They struggle in transition. He's been operating as a pick and roll ball handler a little bit, like 8% of the time this season. He's one of the most effective ball handlers in the NBA. Everything lines up for him to actually have a good game. Like at 6,600, if he comes out and puts up 35, 40 fantasy points, I will take that all day.
Yeah, I think 66 on DK is reasonable. The 7-3 on Fan was a little bit, that's where I kind of was a little bit iffy.
Yeah, we've been over this though. Like everybody's
Yeah,
inflated on FanDuel. Like
that's true.
everybody is inflated on FanDuel. So like at a certain point, we just kind of have to accept that and adjust the way we think and like just go for whoever's going to score like a bunch of fantasy points. And I think Tobias Harris has an excellent chance of doing that.
Yeah. Do you have any interest in the backcourt here? I mean, it's a good spot here against this Denver defense. Just it's been subpar play of late.
Yeah, I like Reggie Jackson a little bit. I would definitely be more interested in Reggie if Avery Bradley sits. If that happens, in 67 minutes with Avery Bradley off the floor, Reggie Jackson has a 34.5% usage rate and 1.1 fantasy points per minute. I would absolutely be going to that well if Avery Bradley does sit out tonight.
Yeah, that's a good spot. Anyone else?
I guess we'd have to wait and see who would benefit the most from like Bradley sitting. You might see some minutes for like Luke Kennard or Langston Galloway. I don't mind a flyer on any of those guys. It's just we're gonna have to wait and see that news.
Washington, Brooklyn next year, 215. This is another one we're going to have to wait for some news. Obviously, John Wall bumped up to questionable. You and I both really not looking for him to play tonight. He did go through a full practice, but he's still, 50-50 to play tonight. Road game against Brooklyn, I think he takes a night off again.
Yeah. Reports came out yesterday that he was listed as out. Like in the game notes, he was listed as out, but that's just because like Scott Brooks never actually said like he was questionable or out. Like Scott Brooks just kind of let it be like there's a chance that he plays, and he didn't really elaborate on it any further. I don't think he says this is the front end of a back-to-back. They have a tough matchup tomorrow. I would expect him if he plays to play tomorrow and not tonight, but we're going to have to keep an eye on that and see what happens. Like if he plays, like 8,200 up for John Wall against Brooklyn is pretty darn interesting. Like even in limited minutes, he could put up a 38 840 fantasy point outing against Brooklyn. Like, I might be interested in GPPs in John Wall if he plays tonight.
And Scott Brooks might come out and say, Wall will be on a minutes limit, but I feel like we've seen quite a few games where Wall's been on a minutes limit and he plays like 34.
Yeah, Scott Brooks just does not care. Like, he's kind of like Tom Thibodeau. Like, we saw last season with Bradley Beal. It's like he's dealing with a stress fracture in his leg, or a stress reaction in his leg, and his minutes are going to be monitored. He still plays like 38. So, I mean, like I said, if he's actually in, like, I definitely like taking a shot on him in GPPs. If he sits, I love Tomas Satoransky tonight. In a matchup against Brooklyn, he should absolutely go ham. And like, I don't want Tim Frazier. Like, I know he's cheap. I know it's Brooklyn, but like, I would just so much rather have Satoransky, just because, like, we were talking about it beforehand. Their bench lineups have been the ones that have been carrying this team. Like, their best net rating their best net rating lineup in the month of December for lineups that have played over 5 minutes has been Beal, Satoransky, Mike Scott, Jan Mahinmi, and Kelly Oubre. Like, Satoransky's in the top three net rating lineups for the month of December. So like, he's the guy that you want if Wall sits.
Yeah, I've really, outside the first time that Tim Frazier came into the lineups for Wall, that was the only time I've had interest in. I know you and I have been pro Satoransky on this pod for games in the past, and one, he's still too cheap in this matchup. I mean, Brooklyn 29th defensive efficiency against point guards. I have no interest with paying up for Beal. We've obviously seen, the upside games, especially over the last few. And then I kind of drop off. Like, I like Markieff Morris and GPPs. I like Kelly Oubre still, even coming off a down game. Both of them are down game guys, but sure, a little risk for Morris, but at his price tag in this matchup, like, I'll still take quite a bit of looks.
Yeah, I mean, I like Beal. Like, it's such a great spot for him. Obviously, the price is really, really tough to pay, but I mean, if we get a game out of him like we got in Portland, where he attempted 37 shots against Brooklyn, if you're attempting like 30 shots, that's insane. So, I mean, he has 21, 22, 37, 15 over his last four. Like, that's a lot of field goal attempts. So like, the usage is there for him. I don't mind him. Like, he's really expensive, but he should have no issues paying off that salary. You mentioned Markieff. He's fine. Minutes have been really volatile for him recently, just because like, he hasn't been playing that great. The status of Jan Mahinmi is gonna change how I kind of attack this Washington team. If he sits, like, as crazy as it sounds, I think I really like Mike Scott here.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we've been looking at this one. We've seen the bench shadow count some of the starters, especially in the second half of late. I don't mind going there. Like, I don't mind Oubre. I don't mind some of these bench guys. And Gortat's still cheap to a point where if he can get a little bit of extra run, but he's another risky play. Like, he's cheap, and there's just potential he can only see like 4 second half minutes because they just go with other guys.
And he just hasn't been playing very well. Like, he's averaging, like, on this road trip that they've been on, because they've been on a four game road trip. He's averaging 4.3 points per game and shooting 7 of 22 on this road trip. Like, that shot's not falling for him. He doesn't offer anything to this team. Like, he's not a great rebounder. So like, Scott Brooks doesn't have any incentive to roll him out for extended minutes if he's not playing very well, which is why I have interest in Mike Scott. Jan Mahinmi, if he plays, is probably interesting, but like, this dude's been having knee issues for the past like 2 seasons. So like, I really don't think he suits up tonight. So it would be Mike Scott for me, and maybe a little Kelly Oubre. Otto Porter's price is pretty high, but I mean, he has a decent chance of paying that off tonight, even though he's going to be matched up with DeMarre Carroll. So you could go there too.
Yeah, no, I definitely don't mind that. And on the Brooklyn side, obviously Okafor coming over. We expect him to get some decent run here. And, I kind of want to be on the Okafor train before everyone else hops on. I want to get my seats early, and I don't mind taking a shot in GPPs here.
I don't really mind it either. Like, I don't know what Brooklyn's going to do with his minutes. I would not be shocked to see him start and play like 22, 24 minutes And like this season, he's averaging, I know it's only 2 games. He's only played in like 2 or 3 games, but like a little over a fantasy point per minute. Like it's not a bad spot for him. I would expect, like I said, him to see decent minutes. He's 4,200. Like he could easily pay off his salary tonight. So go for it. Like I will probably have a decent amount of exposure to Okafor here. And we even have like the Okafor Gortat narrative. Like these two don't like each other. So maybe Okafor comes out and just tries to go bonkers on him.
Yeah, like he's cheap enough to throw in multiple lineups. If you're building multiple lineups, like that's how I kind of look at it. Because I mean, kind of look like they're a little bit thin in that front court. Obviously the power forward position, like they're going to probably play a lot of wings and stuff at the 4 now.
Yeah, I mean, like you're just looking at, they have Rondé, who plays power forward, Jared Allen, Quincy AC, Mozgov, who's not going to play. Like it would make a lot of sense for this team, especially going forward, if this is how they want to play. Like it would make a lot of sense for Jared Allen and Okafor just to split the minutes evenly.
Yeah, I think so. And really, when you look at it, it's like I'll say, like DeMar Carroll, I do have some interest in here. Like he's been a little bit down of late, but pretty good spot for him. And he's a guy who can also play a little bit of the 4 here behind Hollis Jefferson when needed.
Yeah, I like both Hollis Jefferson and Carroll here. I think both are excellent options. We've seen wings against Washington really succeed. So, like, I think I'm probably going. I don't know. I'm probably going Carroll over Rondé here, but I don't mind Rondé. But I think Carroll's probably the guy for me.
Dinwiddie, you have any interest in here?
A little bit. Like I would like to see his price come down just a little bit more, but down to 6,100 on DraftKings, that's pretty cheap. Dude can't stay out of foul trouble though. Like, and that's a little concerning. Like he played 19 minutes against the Thunder because he had 5 fouls, had 3 against Miami. Hey, if he gets in foul trouble, like you're going to be burned paying $6K for someone like him. So not terribly interested in cash. GPPs, that's fine. Karis LeVert's a guy who went off against the Thunder. He played a bunch of minutes because Dinwiddie was in foul trouble. Again, you can take a shot on any of these guys. Karis, Joe Harris, Isaiah Whitehead, if he's going to stay with the team. Again, another guy you could look at. But there's so many wings here and backcourt players. Like there's not anyone that stands out to me as like a guy that I really want to lock in my lineups.
Yep, no, I agree. I think Dinwiddie really on DK is the only one that maybe I'll take a shot on because LeVert's a little bit too expensive, and I could easily see those minutes kind of dropping back down.
Yeah, and like he's an excellent isolation player, and the Wizards have struggled with an isolation defense this season. So he's in the 87th percentile of all isolation players. He has a 1.15 points per possession. So like if you expect a few extra points off of isolation plays tonight, you could see him having a solid outing.
Spurs Dallas next one here, 197 total. We get Kawhi back. Probably not for a ton of minutes tonight, but enough to probably just kind of make Rudy Gay a little bit out of play for me. I do think Aldridge is still a great pivot if Porzingis ends up being popular in that same price range, and just Porzingis has an off night shooting.
Yeah, it's a good spot for Aldridge. We've seen him just go off on Dallas twice this season. So like he's an excellent Porzingis pivot. He's an excellent option if you want to play both Porzingis and Aldridge. Like I don't necessarily think you have to fade one just to play the other. Like the lineup I have right now, I have enough salary to get Porzingis, Drummond, and Kevin Love, who I absolutely love. So like if you don't want to play Love at that price, you can pay for Aldridge. Like I don't expect Kawhi to play more than like 20 minutes tonight, and he shouldn't take too much usage and production away from him.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, I still really like the front court here. Like I still don't mind Pau Gasol. Like he's only 5,700 on DK. Centers against Dallas, obviously third most fantasy points allowed this year. Rebounding, they're bottom 5. Like I know Gasol burned in the first game, but rebounded or bounced back really well in the second one. And at his price tags, I'm still for a points per dollar play, like he could have a ton of upside.
Yeah, for sure. I like him. I like him in all formats.
Oh, all right. Quick and simple. I was expecting a little bit more.
No, I mean, there's really not much to say. Like, he's a good play in all formats.
Anyone else here for this Spurs side? I mean, kind of with the backcourt, everyone's starting to get a little bit healthier for the Spurs team.
Yeah, I actually like Tony Parker a little bit. Dallas struggles to defend pick and roll ball handlers. Parker's excellent operating in the pick and roll. We've seen him the past couple games really start to play extremely well. Against Miami, he had 28 points, 9 assists. Against Boston, he had 24 points, 4 assists, 5 rebounds. I would expect his minutes to start to get up there right around the 20 to 22 mark. 4K against a Dallas team that really not great on defense. Like, I kind of like that price.
Yeah, 3,900 on FanDuel, 4K on DraftKings. If you are trying to get someone in the higher sets, you have a LeBron like, you're trying to get Porzingis in with them. Like, yeah, he's definitely a guy that you can look at.
Yeah, and him being back does kind of hurt the rest of the guys. Like, I don't want Mills and I don't want DeJounte Murray.
Yeah, and are you kind of waiting, obviously, with the small forward situation until it clears things up, until Kawhi's back to full force?
Yeah, and one quick note, all signs point to John Wall returning for the Wizards Wednesday in DC versus the Grizzlies per source. So just
We'll see.
touch
We'll
on
see
that.
in 5 hours.
Yeah, John Wall's going to play 40 minutes tonight.
That should be it for the Spurs, right?
Yep.
On the Dallas side of things, obviously Dennis Smith Jr. already ruled out. We saw Yogi Ferrell play a lot of minutes. Didn't even sink a shot, I think, in that game.
The last game against Minnesota, he did. Now, against the Spurs this season, Yogi Ferrell has averaged 26.6 minutes in 2 games, and he's gone 0 for 11 from the field. Yogi Ferrell has not actually scored a point against the Spurs this season.
That's by my calculations, that's not good.
Yeah, that's not good.
So for me, it's always going to be JJ Barea, like just a better fantasy points per minute player. He's shown a better history against the Spurs. I mean, he's averaged 34 fantasy points in 24 minutes over the 2 games. Of course, shooting around 56% from the field. Like, he's still cheap enough where that's the backcourt guy that I do have the interest in.
Yeah, it's always going to be Barea for me. Like, I'm notoriously known, like, in my small little community of friends that play daily fantasy basketball, to be a Yogi Ferrell hater. Like, I never understood the love for him last year. Like, he's not good. Like, he's just not good at basketball. He's terrible.
He's an Indiana guy, right?
Yeah.
It was all Ricky Sanders driven. All the Yogi Ferrell love was Ricky Sanders driven.
Probably. But yeah, it's pretty much Barea for me. And I like Wes Matthews a little bit here. We've seen usage go up with Dennis Smith off the floor. Price is still kind of hovering in that mid 4K range. Like, he's pretty darn volatile, but he's playing a ton of minutes. He's taking a decent amount of shots. So not the greatest of matchups, but like, it's a decent spot for him to produce. So I actually really like him. And I like him at that price.
Yeah, I don't mind them playing heavy minutes. I mean, Spurs were kind of rough against, or they weren't great against shooting guards, but I've kind of shored that up of late. But yeah, he's another one I don't mind. Harrison Barnes, I think with obviously Kawhi back, even if he's going to see Kawhi for so-and-so minutes, like a little too expensive for me now in this spot.
Yeah, and he's been really bad against the Spurs. So, like, it's not a great matchup for him in general.
Yeah, I don't really have any interest in like Dirk or any of the front court guys. Kleber's a guy who's been playing minutes. I kind of rather go other directions.
Yeah, I agree there.
So, Philadelphia, Minnesota, probably the trickiest, most could be potential slate ruining game of the night here.
I mean, every game on the slate could be a slate ruining game, but
this one even more so.
Yeah, there's a lot of injury news to talk about, and it's all on the Philadelphia side. And it's pretty much just Joel Embiid and Robert Covington. Both these guys are listed as questionable. Both are dealing with back injuries. Embiid hurt his back against the Lakers. I believe that was Friday. That game was on Friday, and nobody reported it until Sunday's game when he was a late scratch. So Covington hurt his back. I believe he was chasing a ball out of bounds and fell onto a chair or something. I don't know. I really don't know like what to do with this game right now until we get some news. Like if I had to guess, like right now, if I shook my magic 8 ball and took a wild guess, I think Embiid plays and Covington sits, but right now that's just a guess.
Yeah, and it's really all we can do at this point. And I'm not one, I think if you're building multiple lineups, if you want to take shots on some of the backup guys and hoping that someone sits, you can do so. If you want to play it safe, I think on a 7-game slate, there's enough options to look elsewhere and kind of avoid being burned.
That just really sucks because this is such a great spot to target all of these guys. And like, if Embiid plays, it's an excellent matchup against Towns, even though his price is elevated. And like, if Embiid and Covington sit, like JJ Redick is just in such an amazing spot. I really, really want some JJ Redick tonight against this Timberwolves defense, but like, it's so hard unless we get news early.
Yeah, and the game starts at 9:30 Eastern. I don't expect a lot of news, but I think you can take shots. Like, so, if Embiid doesn't play, we get news. Like we saw Holmes, we saw Amir Johnson's kind of split the workload. Like that's going to be the case again. And we saw Trevor Booker coming in and back up, Dario Saric and Booker play well. Like if those minutes stay put, like we know Trevor Booker's a really solid second unit guy.
Yeah, I really do like him. Like we'd see him probably play like a little over 20 minutes, and it's a decent spot. Like he's a walking double basically. So like I do like him. And if Embiid sits, go for it with Amir Johnson and Rashawn Holmes. I would expect Johnson probably to be the guy that gets the majority of minutes because he's a better defender, or he's at least supposed to be a better defender. Like if Covington sits and Embiid plays, like Embiid's fine. Like Redick's a good option if Covington sits and Embiid plays. Simmons is a great option if Embiid sits and if Covington sits. Simmons is a good option if Covington plays and Embiid sits. If Embiid plays, I don't really have a ton of interest in Simmons, but he's fine in cash games. If Embiid sits, Saric is in play. Like I'm just trying to go through like who's in play if one of these situations happens, but like it's just really, really tough until we get news to really break down too much of this game.
Yeah, it really is. And I do have a little interest in Saric, even in a tougher spot. Taj Gibson's obviously an above average defender still here. And Saric at 5,700 on DK, 64 on FanDuel. Like it's not bad prices. It's a little bit in foul trouble last game, still produced over 30 fantasy points in 27 minutes despite shooting 30% from the field. Like he's going to go out there. He's rebounding really well right now. The assists have been up over the last few games. Like Saric is a guy I feel like I always have interest in regardless of kind of who plays.
Yeah, I've been on the Saric train. I loved Saric last season. I used him so much. It was insane. But I've been using him a lot this season. His price just never really seems to go up over that 6K mark. It's starting to climb a little bit on DraftKings, but like again, he's in play regardless of what happens with Embiid and Covington. But if either one of those guys sits, he's just an insanely awesome play.
Yeah. So this is going to be one where you got to listen to it and then rewind to listen to it again because you covered so many different angles.
Yeah, just get your notebook out and write down. Brent said play Redick if Covington out. Play this guy if this happens, and then just leave that posted on your monitor or whatever.
Yeah, and hopefully we get that news early. Otherwise, everything becomes a lot more risky.
Yeah, I really hope so. But like we know how bad the Sixers are with injury news. What was a Saturday when Saric was doubtful and then ended up playing? So it's just so frustrating.
Yeah. On the Minnesota side, Jeff Teague, I know is like a name that got mentioned before the show that you're looking at here. I kind of feel like everyone else is a little bit too expensive, although I do have some interest here in Towns, especially if Embiid does sit. Towns is, playing heavy minutes of late. as always, but 37 over the last 5 games. Starting to see a little bit more upside, back-to-back 50-plus fantasy point games in good spots. He's in another good spot here. Like, Towns at 8,700 on DK is not a bad option, especially if everyone's going to be looking at Drummond or even Porzingis.
Yeah, for sure. I really do like him. Even if Embiid plays, like I think you can look at Towns. Like it's still a good matchup if Embiid plays, especially on DraftKings because you get the double bonus for Towns, and it's a guy like even though he's been outside of the last 2 games, was terrible. Like in recent history, it's like he still leads the NBA in doubles, which is crazy. I do like him in the spot. He's another guy in that like 8 to 9K range. That's just a really good, solid option. Playing a bunch of minutes, I would not fault anyone for going Towns over Porzingis or Towns over Aldridge or Drummond in the spot.
Yeah. And, front court, like Taj Gibson, I still don't mind. He's a little bit expensive for me on DraftKings for he's 6K, 5,300 on FanDuel, like that second piece. Like he's not a bad option. He's still playing heavy minutes. He's another one.
Yeah, I like him. I like him a lot. I think you mentioned Teague earlier. I think Teague's an outstanding option regardless of any of the injury news that happens today. Unless, it's Jeff Teague is out, then obviously he's not a good play. And I think Jimmy Butler's an outstanding option as well. He's 8K on DraftKings, price a little up there, but again, it's a guy. He's over 40 minutes in 5 straight games. Like if you're getting a guy at 8K that's playing like 40 minutes a game, like it's really tough to overlook him. Wiggins has been just atrocious recently, but he's playing a bunch of minutes. I go for it in GPPs. Just know that he doesn't really do anything outside of scoring. So I like Teague. I like Taj, Butler. I think Butler and Teague are my 2 top plays. Cat, an excellent pivot off of the other guys in the same price range, and Taj, just a cash game option.
Yep, no, I'm with you there. Phoenix and Sacramento, 211. We really end the game and the slate on a big game. It's huge. We got all these guys that I don't even know who's on their teams anymore at this point.
Yeah, I like this game a lot, and it sucks that it's the late game because there's one piece of news that could just bend everyone over tonight, and that's going to be who Phoenix is going to use at center and whether or not Willie Cauley-Stein plays.
And we're not going to get that lock.
No, we're not. Like, there is a chance that like Phoenix comes out. Like Jay Triano has come out like multiple times over the past like week and been like, yeah, I'm going to play like a 20, 20 and 8 rotation with my 3 centers. 2 are going to get 20 minutes. The other's going to get 8. And then like later that night, one of the centers is ruled out for personal reasons or like just doesn't get any minutes. Like this is an excellent Tyson Chandler spot. Like you would think they need him to match up with Zach Randolph, who has just been like destroying everybody recently. He's just been on like a freaking rampage, beasting like everybody. So I think Chandler's the only guy that has a chance to stop him tonight. And I absolutely love Chandler in this matchup. It's just, I don't know if he's going to play.
Yeah, that's the problem. I mean, the rotating Suns centers, it's such a pain. This is such a good spot. I mean, King's second most fantasy points allowed to opposing centers this year, allowing 44 rebounds per game. Like, I definitely want to take some shots with Chandler. Like, I still don't mind Monroe here. Like, I think Monroe comes in as a second option, but he's just a GPP guy because we have seen 30+ upside out of Monroe lately.
Yeah, it is such a great spot for centers, and like if Monroe's the guy that gets the minutes tonight, he could absolutely smash. It's just I don't know if he's gonna get the minutes. Like I hate to be that guy that says, well, if he plays and if he gets minutes, he's gonna be a good play. But I mean, people that are familiar with the Suns have to know the risk they're taking. Like by taking any of these 3 centers, like it is a risky proposition because Jay Triano, for whatever reason, thinks he has to play all 3 guys. So just know when you're taking any of these 3 guys, they're all 3 excellent options, but there is a probably 50-50 chance that one of them is not going to play and you're going to take a 0.
Yeah, that's an issue.
Yeah. I mean, Surprisingly, you can still cash with zeros in your lineup because I did it with 2 in my lineup last night. But uh, like on a normal night, you probably are not going to cash with a 0 in your lineup.
Yeah. And as far as other Suns guys go, I mean, we saw Josh Jackson kind of step into a larger role. Hasn't really been great. Um, if you're kind of building multiple lineups, like he's a guy in a good spot, I will take a shot on if I'm kind of going stars and scrubs because he is still cheap.
Yeah, I don't really like. He's a guy that he notches like just a bunch of stats. Like he just comes out and he gets like 3 or 4 assists, like 3 or 4 rebounds, a couple blocks and steals, and then gets like 10 points. And generally that's good enough for like 20 to 24 fantasy points. 4,300 at that price tag on DraftKings is starting to climb a little bit where I don't really want to pay it. Like the guy that I have the most interest in here, and I wrote him up in my GPP article, and he's probably only going to end up playing like 9 minutes because I wrote him up, but it's Mike James. Like we saw the last game, he actually came out, played a decent amount of minutes, and just went bananas against the Suns or against the Spurs. 3 of the 4 games without Devin Booker this season. Is it 3 of 4? Hang on, I have it here. Give me a second. See, they've played 3 total games without Booker this season. In those 3 games, Mike James has 42, 8, and 36 DraftKings points. Like he has a massive usage rate without Booker on the floor. He puts up a ton of points per minute without Booker on the floor. Like they need a secondary scoring option because TJ Warren cannot be the only scoring option they have. Tyler Ulis, not a great scorer. Josh Jackson's okay. The rest of this team, like Marquise Chris and Dragon Bender, these guys are limited offensively. Like a smart coach would just tell Mike James to go out and play 30 minutes and just jack up as many shots as he can. I think he's an excellent GPP option tonight. Like you can't use him in cash because it's a revolving door of guards, just like center. But in GPPs, like I think he's an excellent option.
Yeah, I think the only one who's cash worthy for me is TJ Warren.
Yeah, I mean, we see the shot attempts are there without Booker. Production has been down a little bit because defenses are able to focus on him, but luckily the Kings don't really have any good defenders. So Warren's in a great spot. I think you could look at him in all formats. But again, it's mostly Mike James for me. Like I think there's other guys other than Warren that I would rather go with here.
On the Kings side of things here, we've seen Randolph just turn back the clock to the grindhouse days. Like he's 23-12 over the last 5 games. He's playing minutes in the 30s. The price is up like it's 2013 again here. Like this is what we're getting out of Randolph right now.
Yeah, that price, it's really tough to play. Again, you're going to want to monitor the status of Willie Cauley-Stein because if Cauley-Stein is able to play, that probably puts a slight damper on the upside that Randolph has. Like you're not going to see him play 34, 35 minutes, but this should be a fast-paced game, and Zebo's had no issues recently in these fast-paced games, and we saw against Cleveland, he put up freaking 48 fantasy points, 18, 6, and 10. Like he's been destroying people. So if Willie Cauley-Stein is out, like I will still pay that price for Randolph because like 38, 40 fantasy points out of this dude is not out of the realm of possibility. And I will take that tonight at 7,100.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I mean, we got the Kings kind of rotating guys in and out of the G League. Like, we saw Jakar Sampson, we saw Skal Labissiere go down and then come back up.
Yeah, like I think right now Skal is up. Papagiannis, Jack Cooley, and Jakar Sampson are down, if I recall correctly. Let me look and see. I don't know if Justin Jackson, I believe, is back up right now. Malachi Richardson, I believe, is back up right now. I would expect maybe some transactions to happen around 1 or 2 o'clock this afternoon that sends some of these guys back down, but as far as the guards go, Buddy Hield is my favorite option coming off the bench. I covered him in my GPP article as well, but I think he's the guy that I have the most interest in as one of the guards.
Yeah, certainly, definitely a shooter. Everything else has been kind of limited. We've seen Frank Mason play some games here late where he's getting into the 20s, taking some shot attempts. I mean, double-digit shot attempts in each of the last 2 games. I I don't know if there's enough upside. Like I kind of rather go with Parker or James if I'm kind of leaning in this price range of guards.
Yeah, I think you can take a shot on him. Like it's not a terrible play, like especially if George Hill is playing bad or, if they decide to, play Mason and like Buddy at the 3 and then Mason at the 2 or however they want to do it. Like you would still expect him to probably see 20 to 24 minutes. And like with what's happening with George Hill in the news, like Dave Yeager could just decide not to roll him out there because he doesn't want to play a guy that's out here openly criticizing ownership in the team. So like Mason at 39 under 4K on DraftKings, that's pretty darn interesting. So again, it's a guy that you can take a shot on. Like I don't see a ton of upside out of him. Like you might be able to get 24 fantasy points, but at 3,900, that's pretty solid.
I was going to ask if you saw the George Hill news because how much alcohol did he have in his system to think that the Kings were going to push for the playoffs with this roster?
I mean, like a little bit of self accountability has to be in place here. Like, I think George Hill, if he just thought about it for like 2 seconds, would realize that they probably weren't going to be doing anything. But I will say, like, the coaching has not helped. Like, they could be more competitive if things were changed just a little bit.
Yeah, and it's got to be frustrating to see 12-man rotations here. 12-man rotations generally don't lead you to believe that you're pushing for playoffs.
No, it really doesn't.
So that's it for us here. Let's go top scorer of the night because I feel like there are a handful of options that could be in play here.
Top scorer of the night. Are we going to limit it like under 10K or anything?
I mean, no. We can go whoever.
I mean, LeBron, like that's
all right, fine, whatever. I guess I could have said not LeBron, but
I mean, if we're going not LeBron, I'm going to go with the unicorn.
All right, I'm going to go with Towns there.
There you go.
So.
Oh, and we have the Kristaps Jen Selter narrative too, because apparently he's messing around with Jen Selter on Instagram, so maybe that helps him a little bit. Maybe he's out here getting laid, and he's going to start playing a little better.
It would help me. My pots would be a lot better. That's for sure. That's it for us. You can head over to dailyfantasycafe.com. Check out our raid tools and content. Also, Brent's article, GPP picks will be up for tonight's slate. And good luck, guys.
Good luck.